Hey, Champion Nation. Welcome to the Champion Nation podcast.
People. And this is the difference between great marketing and poor selling. Great marketing, I'm trying to make an emotional connection with you. Just you, okay? And that's when you do marketing, you do selling.
Yes.
That's the feeling. So how do I get to know my customer? Well, I ask them questions, and I ask them a lot of questions.
What's up, Champion Nation? How are you doing? My name is Kayshawn Cooper, and I am the host of the Champion Nation podcast. I am thoroughly excited for today's conversation. Just like I am about every conversation. You know, I can do this every single day. Every single day I can sit down and have a conversation with a fellow champion from different parts of the globe. And my dear friend Randy here from Toronto, Canada. Before I formally introduce him, this is why I'm excited. We are all in sales. Regardless if you are a doctor, regardless if you're a student, regardless if you're working at Walmart, Starbucks, wherever, regardless if you are a stay-at-home mom, stay-at-home dad, you are in sales and you are marketing something. The question is, what are you marketing? And how are you marketing that? And that's why I am super excited to have Randy Crane on the show, aka Fearless Marketer with over 4 decades of experience in marketing and sales. Randy, thank you for joining the Champion Nation. How are you doing today?
Sean, thank you so much for having me on the show. This is so exciting for me. You know what? I've been looking forward to Champion Nation for a while now because we've had to reschedule a couple of times as well, right?
Absolutely. We have. So, Randy, just briefly, tell us, you know, who you are, what you do, and why you do what you do.
Okay. So, I don't know whether you know this or not.
Okay.
But I was originally going to be a priest.
I did not.
Okay. So, you really want to hear that story? Anyway,
let's go.
Okay. So for me, I grew up in the church. My father was a salesman, but he was one of those salespeople that was very compassionate. You know, he used to be a tool salesman, so he would go out to mechanics and bike gangs and places that you wouldn't would go. And, people would say to him, "Hey, Tom, you know what? I don't have money I need a socket wrench," or whatever the case is. And he'd say, "Well, here's a socket wrench." And the guy'd say, "Well, I really can't afford it until my next pay." My dad'd say, "It's okay. You just take it. Pay me when you can." He was one of those guys. And I learned from that compassion was very important when it came to, but not just formulated compassion. It has to be authentic compassion. Like, this is who the guy was. Okay. And as human beings, we can always find the loophole when some authenticity.
Okay.
When somebody's being, and it's not anything that you say or anything you do or anything you look. It's just a feeling.
Yes.
So this begins the journey. So as I grew up in the church, to me, it was kind of like a no-brainer. I would just go into the church. And I figured that, being a priest is probably going to be one of the best-selling jobs in the world. Okay. And so I took my degree in theology, and I was right into it. And because I was studying constantly about this. And so it came time for me to do my vows. I was about 6 weeks away, and they wanted to do an interview with me. And so I figured while they were interviewing me, I'd be interviewing them, which, in retrospect was probably not the best idea, but I did it anyway. And so they started asking me questions, and I asked them questions. And I was saying, let's talk about the political times of Jesus. Let's talk about the financial times, And of course, these are not questions that the Catholic Church really likes to talk about.
Right.
So they said to me, you know what, Randy, as much as we'd like to have you as a priest, maybe you need to take a little time to reevaluate your vocation. And I said, you know what, I think that's a good idea, because I didn't figure I was getting all the truth. I figured I was getting a slanted view of what was real, that there had to be more to that story. So I left the church and I started studying more. Now, instead of studying Christianity, I'm studying Buddhism, I'm studying uh, Hinduism, I'm studying everything. Okay. And, but I had to make money in the meantime. So I figured, you know what? My dad was a salesman. He was a good man. I figured I'd do the same thing. So I got into sales for a little while, and that materialized into marketing relatively quickly. For me, Kashan, I started studying more of the marketing materials now. So not only am I studying theology, but I'm studying marketing as well. Donald Miller, Dan Kennedy, Seth Godin. I'm
Yes,
studying all
yes.
these guys. And along the way, the two just kind of became one for me. And I started realizing that selling isn't all about convincing. It's all about emotion.
Yes.
And
Yes.
how emotions dictate exactly what we are and what we do. Because what you think and what you feel creates reality.
It does.
Your reality, not my reality. But what I speak to you and how I speak to you and the things I say to you and the way I say them to you, perception of what your needs, desires, wants, or problems are. And every single person in the world is emotionally connected to the needs, wants, desires, and problems in their life.
Yes.
Every single person. So everything else in the world could be a variable, except that.
Thank you, Randy, for sharing that. And you touched on it. It doesn't matter your background. It doesn't matter ethnicity. It doesn't matter religion, political views. None of those things matter when it comes down to emotion, because we make decisions or buying decisions emotionally, and then we logically rationalize our emotional decision. Is that true?
Absolutely. See, what ends up happening is that, and I'll maybe kind of break this down into a couple of pieces here, because it's really kind of important. People, in order for people to buy anything, they have to be able to emotionally convey what it is that they're looking to do.
Okay.
Okay, so I have a problem, whatever the problem is. I need a CRM system because my boss tells me, the pipes broke in my bathroom, so I need a plumber. Whatever that is, each one of those problems convey a specific emotion. Okay, now the emotions are different. So if my boss says to me, well, we need a new CRM system, go find one. Well, then I may have an emotion of anxiety or worry or concern. On the other hand, if my pipes burst in my house, I got to find a plumber, and I've got panic, and I've got worry, and I've got anxiety, and I got to get to work, and blah blah blah. Like all these things are going on. So it's not like one emotion versus one feeling. And maybe that's why I say I wanted to break this down a little bit, because everybody thinks that emotion and feelings are the same thing, and they're not.
Please elaborate on that. Please.
Okay. Because Sean, you see, you're a nice looking guy. I'm sure did you ever fall in love?
Yeah, I'm married.
You're married. Okay. Do you remember when you fell in love?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. It was emotions that were driving the feeling.
Yes.
So you had feelings of, you know, um, this woman is fantastic. She's awesome. These are emotions that are just flowing in you. Once you fell in love, you were stuck.
Yes.
You couldn't just say, oh, she's a beautiful girl, but, I don't really feel like being in love anymore.
Right.
Can't do that. Once you're in the feeling, you're stuck. There's no exit door. Same thing when we go to go to the theater and we watch a movie, a scary movie. Have you ever been so scared that your body's just shaking?
Yeah, get goosebumps, hair sticking up on my arms.
Right. Try to stop it. You can't.
Right.
Because that's the feeling. And it's the music and the words and the ambiance
Yes.
that drives you to that feeling, to get you in that feeling. Once you're in that feeling, no exit door. You don't get out. So you leave the movie theater and your body's still shaking. And you've read that book and you go, oh my God, it's incredible, because you're stuck in the feeling for a period of time. Now, some things last longer than others.
Right.
Obviously, you don't wake up the next day still in fear.
No.
From the movie. But
no.
You do wake up still in love. You get it?
Yes. Yeah.
So it's being able to understand what emotions drives those feelings, because you want to get somebody in that feeling. And as a salesperson, once you're in the feeling, I got you sold.
So how do you properly convey a message using emotion, or how do you properly emotionally convey a message?
Well, let's talk about the way, we were all taught by people who know less than we do. Let's face it.
Okay.
The human experience has evolved drastically since 1980. Okay. And I use this in terms of salespeople. Salespeople, marketing people, hi, Kishan. My name is Randy. I've been with the company for 20 years. We have the best people, the best price, the best product, the best service, the best delivery, the best warranty. You ever heard that sales pitch before?
Yeah, and I zone out. I don't want to hear that.
That's 1,000 times, right?
Yeah, I don't.
Right. So why do we do that? Because we were taught that back in the 80s. And those people from the 80s, some of those people like me are still kicking around that keep teaching the same things. So there's an evolvement of the human species. So what has happened is the new millennium came, and all of that old stuff, even though it's still there, has got to be moved out. So those people will eventually die off. And there'll be new people that are teaching the new stuff. And this takes generations to go through. But the interesting part about this is that there's nothing about what I said that actually inspires anyone. And if I'm going to buy something, I want to be inspired.
Yes.
I want 100%. To be inspired.
Right. And Randy, it doesn't matter if it's a $40,000 car or a $400,000 home or a $20 pair of jeans at your local department store, and the salesperson comes up and asks you, "Hey, could I help you find your next outfit?" You want to be inspired no matter what the ticket item is. Is that correct? Or does it? Or does it have a ticket price on it, like a minimum?
No. Look, you know what? The price of anything can only be valued by the want, the need, the desire, or the problem. Okay? The bigger the problem, the bigger the price. The bigger the desire, the bigger the price. This is why, you know what? If you want to buy a set of speakers, you can buy them for like $100. But if you want to go to a trip to Mexico, it's going to cost you $1,000.
Right.
The desire. But you see, to me, I look at it and I think of it a little bit differently. How important is something? So whatever it is, if I'm the salesperson, I need to know how emotionally engaged you are. And, it's funny. Every salesperson that I talked to, especially over the last week, I've talked to 3 of them, and they're all in such a rush to close the deal. Got to close the deal. Got to make the money. Got to get the commission. Okay. And that's a problem. Okay. When I do a sales call, and believe me, Sean, I still do sales calls for my business.
Okay.
And, I'll get on a call and we'll talk. And, as I'm sure, as you can see, I'm a storyteller, right? So
I love it.
okay. And so we're talking, and I'm going to tell you stories. And then you're going to say to me, and I'm going to deliver you so much value. But it's not my value, it's your value. See, everybody, again, this comes down to bad planning. Okay. How can I go out and talk to you if I don't know you?
You can't.
How can I deliver value that you think is good value?
You won't
Just
know if we don't talk.
Because just because I think it's a good value doesn't mean you will.
Correct.
Now,
Correct.
and again, this comes down to marketing in its finest form, because we do this all the time. We just think, well, I hear marketers do this. They'll say, well, I just created this new lead magnet that says this, and it gives you a chart of that, and all of these wonderful things. And, people are going to go crazy for it. But they don't.
They don't.
Why? It's because it's your perceived value, not
absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, but then you say, well, Randy, how do we know what the perceived value is by the customer? Well, you talk to the customer. And this comes back to my original story. So I turn around and I say, well, look, why don't we have a conversation? We'll talk about it, and I'll tell you some stories. And I'm going to deliver you some value. And I can tell by the look on your face whether the value is something that you think is good or not.
And
if I look at you and you say, oh, yeah, you know what, it's really, really good, then I know I've got something here. If you turn around and say, yeah, well, okay, then I've moved that aside and I come back with more value. So I want to make sure that I have an arsenal of value that I can deliver to this guy. And then he'll say to me, well, you know what, Randy, well, how much is all this going to cost? All this marketing going to cost? And I say,
everyone will want to know the money. Everyone will want to know what it's going to cost.
That's right. So I turn around and I say, Deshaun, listen, you know what? I'll be perfectly frank with you. I really haven't got a clue. I really have not got a clue what this is going to cost. But why don't we hook up again tomorrow? Okay. And then let me, maybe I'll have some idea then for you. Okay. So we set up a meeting for tomorrow, the next day, whatever it is. And then this gives me an opportunity now to deliver more value. See, I'm not trying to deliver value to convince you. I'm trying to deliver value so I can see what turns you on, what you get excited about, and what you don't. So now I'm getting to learn more about you as a customer. And I'm going to tell you maybe a couple more stories, and you're going to tell me a story or two. And we're going to sit on the call, and then you're going to say to me, well, Randy, how much is this going to cost? And I'm going to say, geez, Deshaun, I don't really know. But you know what? I'll tell you what. Let's meet up again on Thursday. And by then, I should have a better idea. Okay, so down we go again. I'm delivering value, watching your moods, watching your eyes, watching your body language, listening to you, telling you stories. You're telling me stories. We've got a rapport going now. This isn't a one-sided conversation. This is a two-sided conversation. And now I'm excited to talk to you.
Yes.
And you're excited to talk to me. And then you're saying things like, Randy, what if we did something like this? Or Randy, what if we did something like that? Now I know we're connecting.
Yes.
Now, it comes time for the third meeting. And he says to me, Randy, what is this going to cost? Man, just tell me what it is and I'll write the check. Because I've delivered so much value in his life.
So much value.
So much, but it's perceived value.
Yes.
Not just value that I think is any good.
No.
Okay, what I think is good could be garbage. It's what you think. And you see, this comes back to, and I know yep, I talk a lot, but it's interesting. I go back to 1980. Okay. And I remember when the internet came out, all these graphic designers that couldn't get work 10 years before because the ad agencies, all the big ad agencies owned almost the entire industry of marketing or advertising at that time. They all turned around and they were all going broke. I'm talking about the graphic designers. Mm-hmm. So when the internet came out, these guys got all a whole new lease on life. They were doing beautiful websites for people because everybody in 1990 wanted to have a website.
Absolutely.
Okay. Kashan, let me ask you a question. What does a graphic designer know about marketing? What do they know about selling?
Nothing. They just know how to design websites or design graphics.
That's right. So what did they do? They put up a whole bunch of websites that has no intrinsic value. They were online brochures. Okay. Information posts, things like that. But you see, they didn't have any because they didn't understand it.
Right.
Okay. Today we have we're looking at things a little differently. Okay. The intrinsic value back then was just to get yourself a website on. Look, man, I got a website. It's huge. But what did the website say? Buy from me. Buy from me. Look at me. Look at me.
Right.
Today, we don't do that. Today, it's about your website shouldn't be about you. Matter of fact, it should be about everybody else but you.
Yes.
It should be about your customer. It should be about the intrinsic value that you deliver to them that they appreciate.
Randy, let me tell you something. We are 21 minutes in, and it has been so many different nuggets. And I have a coaching business. I have a confidence coaching business. And one of the things that I talk about is when you're delivering a message, the number one thing to keep in mind is it is not about you.
No,
it is not about you. Although, egotistically, we want it to be about us. When the ego plays a part, we want it to be about us, but it's not.
It's so funny too, because, I spent a lot of time studying the ego. Okay. And how that plays a part in your life. The ego is an untrained horse. And most people don't realize it. They use these terms, well, oh my God, Kashan, you've got such a big ego. And they look at it like a bad thing. That has nothing really to do with ego. Your ego is there to keep you safe. Under any circumstances, it's to keep you from dying. Okay? And I know this because I used to be oh my God, used to jump out of airplanes and parachute.
Okay.
And I still remember the first time I took all the courses and everything for it, right? And that was all good. All the theory was fine. I was on the ground, right? And anyways, the day comes that we had to do our first jump. So we picked up our packs and put them on our back and took them into the plane. I was good with that. We went up in the plane. That was good with that. Okay. Now it comes time to get out on the platform. And I was okay with that until I got out there.
Looking down.
It was a foggy day, so I couldn't see anything.
Oh, no.
So they have a platform you stand on. And it's like I don't know, it's like a piece of metal you put your feet on. And you got a bar you're holding on to like this. And my body was screaming at me. Don't do it. Don't do it. And it's almost like I could hear the words. And there was a little girl. She was about 16 years old. She says next to me, she says, all you got to do is just let go.
Ooh.
She says, just let go.
Ooh.
And then she was gone. She went. So I'm sitting there. So I figure I'm going to be smart about it. I'm just going to do one of these. Okay. The length of time it took me to do that, I've got. Let me tell you something. As soon as I got out there and I pulled the cord, I was fine.
All you got to do is let go.
That's all I had to do is let go. You see, the problem with the ego is that the ego is the untrained horse.
Yes.
Okay. It will always do exactly what it needs to do to keep you safe.
That's its job.
That's its job. So when people say, "Oh, well, you have an overinflated ego," they're using the term in a wrong way. Everybody has an overinflated ego. Okay, but it has nothing to do with your personality. It has everything to do with keeping you safe.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Now, I went on to do, as soon as I got down to the ground with the parachute, I loaded up another one, went up again, and did it again, and did it again. I did it 3 times in that day. And you know what?
Why?
Because now there was no more fear. Now the ego calmed down and said, let's do it again. Let's do it again. Okay. And I never had a problem. And I did probably hundreds of jumps over the years.
Wow. Randy, thanks for sharing that story. I want to make something clear to our listeners and our viewers that when we're talking about the customer can be a spouse, it can be a child, right? I just want to make sure we both are on the same page. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And also the business, when we talk about businesses, you are, I am, we are our own business entity. Is that correct as well? Okay. I just want to make sure we both are on the same page, because I know some people may not have a business, some people may not be in sales, but I want them to understand that, number one, they are a business, and number two, whoever they are conveying the message to, they are the customer. Which leads me to this question. Sales has a lot to do with psychology.
Okay.
Yes or no?
Yeah.
Okay. And can you elaborate how psychology plays a role in effective marketing strategies and sales, and how businesses can leverage that knowledge?
Yeah. Okay. So this comes back to a story. Okay. And I'm glad we kind of talked about the ego, because I think this gives us a little bit of a platform to talk about the next level. You know, it's interesting. The human brain, or the human construct, is and the whole world of psychology that goes beyond this is buried in a root of not just psychology but biology. Okay. And let me explain that. So the human brain is divided into thousands of different spots, different places in the brain. Some do things, other things all connect to one another, but there are 2 factors in here. One is the neocortex, and the other is called the limbic system. Now, the limbic system is a small part of the brain that is in the center part of the brain, where the neocortex is what they call the newest part of the brain. Okay. We know this because going back to the days of the church, for 3,000 years, the Jesuit priests have been saying, give me a child until the age of 5 and I'll show you the man. And what that means is that they realize that the neocortex doesn't develop until after the age of 5. So prior to that, all you have is a subconscious mind. You have no ability really to make decisions. You mirror what your parents do, and you follow the programs that nature gives you. And if you think about it, it really kind of makes sense, because how many programs do you need to be a member of a family? Thousands.
Yeah.
How many programs do you need in place in order for you to be a member of society? Thousands. So these programs are put into your subconscious mind before the age of 5. Now, the neocortex starts to show up. And this is why the Jesuit priests would say, give me a child until the age of 5. In other words, give me your child until they're 5 years old, and they'll be 100% sold on the church. Because they had no other way. They had no rational mind, no conscious mind. So we have the neocortex, and the neocortex, its purpose is to manage large quantities of information and can manage languages for you. Okay, now, so if I come to you and I'm a salesperson, I say, well, you know, our company is here and we've done this and we do that and we have the best people, the best price, and blah, 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 blah. The neocortex does it great. It'll understand that. What the neocortex doesn't do is it doesn't understand emotion, and it doesn't understand decision making. So giving large quantities of information to the neocortex doesn't make sense because it has no ability to understand emotion. It has no understanding of making a decision. So it can't. That's like trying to sell, walking into a business and trying to sell the receptionist. You can't sell somebody who can't be sold. On the other side, the limbic system doesn't understand large quantities of information, and it doesn't understand languages. What it does understand is emotion and decisions. It can make a decision. So going in and talking to somebody about who you are, what you do, all of this sort of thing, me means nothing. Because a human being can't make a decision based on that information. It needs more. It needs emotion. And it's the limbic system, because the emotions are tied to the limbic system, and so is the decision-making process. So it's tied in the tenet of biology, not just psychology. Okay? So again, this comes back to what I was saying before, you know, about salespeople, how they always want to talk about our company and me, and this is what we do. We have the greatest product. We have this, we have that. All of that means nothing. It's like blah, blah, blah. So what inspires that person is what you need to get to.
They call that the why, right?
It's the why. Oh, you know what? One of the greatest books I ever read, and I have to tell you this, Simon Sinek, Start With Why. I recommend everybody read it. And if you haven't, have you read it?
I have not.
Oh, pick up the book. You know what? It's just a wonderful book. It's not a big book, but it's a wonderful book. And I think, you know what? I think that was one of the things that really kind of changed me, because I really love Simon's work. The interesting part about all of this is that the information that I'm giving here, this is not really my information. I'm not, you know, this is information that I've learned from other people over the years.
Okay.
You know, I was very, very fortunate. And I had a very good friend of mine who, I wouldn't necessarily call him a mentor, but he was a fellow that I would talk to periodically. His name was Bob Proctor.
And, are you serious?
Oh, yeah. Do you want to hear the story?
I do want to hear the story. Hey, man, I'm jealous. I'm going to say that on the record. I know this thing is recorded, but I am jealous and envious of you right now.
Look, here's the story. It was 19, oh, hang on a second, I'll tell you. Born 59, 69, 79, 1987.
Okay.
And
he lived in Canada, right?
Pardon me?
He lived in Canada.
Yeah. Actually, he lived in Toronto. Okay. And so a friend of mine, I was just starting university, and it was a Friday night. Friend of mine, Mark, he said to me, he says, listen, Randy, why don't we go down to the Skyline Hotel to watch a guy? And I said, watch a guy do what? He said, well, he's a motivator guy. I said, well, what's a motivator guy? He says, right. Well, you know, he motivates you to do stuff. And I said, do you really want to go to this? He says, yeah. I said, okay. It was either that or stay in the dorm and study. And on a Friday night, you don't want to do that. So I went to this thing. And there was like a handful of people in the room. There wasn't that many. The room probably held about maybe 100 people or so. I don't know. Anyway, we sat at the front, me and Mark. And the guy comes out. I'd never seen him before. And he says, there's not many people here. Would you mind if I just continued? I said, no, go ahead, do it. Let's hear your pitch. He says, okay. So it went on for about, I don't know, maybe an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. And by the time it was over, I mean, I think Mark and I were the only ones left in the room. And he comes over, he sits on the edge of the stage, and we started talking. And I said to him, I said, well, look, I said, you know what? I said, I really loved the event. It was fantastic. And it really did. It really resonated with me. So my friend Mark said, well, look, we got to go. And I said, well, look, I looked at Bob and I said to him, I said, listen, man, I said, I'm really interested in what you got to say. Would you mind hanging back and let's talk? And he said, yeah. He said, sure. So I sent Mark on his way. And he and I sat there till, I don't know, probably 4 a.m.
Wow.
And sitting there having coffee at Tim Hortons till like 4 a.m. And we laughed, we talked, and you know what? I knew Bob for over the last 40 years. And, he actually gave me, sent me a set of tickets to go see a guy named Bill Go. And Bill Go was on tour with Earl Nightingale.
Oh,
so
man, yes.
I went to see Earl in I think it was 1988 or 89, and in Detroit.
Oh,
and I had a chance to shake his hand. I had a chance to.
I see you again.
Well, and this is the thing, because nobody knew it was a big thing back then.
Right.
You know what? I mean, self-help in the 80s. I mean, and you probably don't know this because you're just a baby, but I mean, well, compared to me anyway. Back in the 80s, in the bookstore, you would find authors like Jim Rohn, Tony Robbins, Bob Proctor. They would all be in the occult section.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Like that stuff was kind of taboo.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they had their own section within that section called self-help and self-development, but
yeah,
it was all about that. And it was really considered taboo kind of stuff. Okay. The world at that time believed that, what you see is what you believe, or what you believe is what you see. Seeing is believing.
Right.
But I mean, it's interesting because, for 3,000 years, the Bible has been saying, the exact opposite.
The exact opposite. Wayne Dyer said the same thing.
Absolutely.
He said the same thing. I see it when I believe it.
Well, because you do. Because when you believe, you change your perception, son.
Yes.
Okay. And everything, the Hindus are very antiquated in this, because they'll turn around and they'll say, well, you know what? This is the world we live in is Maya.
Okay.
Maya is the illusion. It's just an illusion. And, it's funny because we look and say, well, if it's an illusion, then it's not real. But then what is real? Real, if what you see and smell and taste and touch is what's real, well, that's only electrical impulses being transcribed by your brain. So it leads you, and believe me, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole today. Okay.
We're going to have a part 2 in 2024, please.
Oh, absolutely.
We're going to work it out, but we got to have
I like where this is going.
Yeah, I do too.
But the facts are what the facts are. And the facts are that what you see is only an impulse of what's being transcribed by your brain. It's just electricity. Okay. So if that's not real, what is real? Okay. And it leads down that question. Now, do I have an answer for that? Well, probably I do, but it may not be the right answer. Okay. coming back to what we were talking about, this is everything we do is emotionally driven. Everything we do in life. Great thing you said earlier, if you dig ditches for a living, you got to be a salesman. If you sell newspapers for a living, you're a salesman. If you work at Walmart, you're a salesperson. If you're a wife, you're a salesperson. Everybody's a salesperson.
Correct.
Okay. I walk in, if I were your age, I'd walk into a bar and I'd see a young girl sitting over there. I'd say, hey, listen, you know what? Do you want to get up and have a dance, or do you want to go for a drink? I'm gonna have to pitch you.
Gotta pitch it.
I gotta sell her.
Yes.
Okay.
You have to.
And it reminds me, I used to have a friend of mine, Tom Welling, and we were in university together, and he was a handsome guy. Like, I mean, a real handsome guy. And he would go up to girls and he would say, do you know how many kernels of corn there are in a frozen bag of corn? And they'd look at him like, what?
What are you talking about?
He'd say, no. Do you ever think about it? No, I don't. Well, why don't we talk about it while we dance? And you know what? He would get the girls. But it wasn't because he was so handsome. It was because he said stuff that was
Make
so...
you think. Make you think.
Yeah. Because back in the 80s, I mean, they'll say, what's your sign? Do you come here often? These are all... And he said to me, he says, I don't want to use those one-liners that everybody else uses. I need to come up with something unique. And that's what he came up with. And it worked for him.
Speaking of coming up with something unique, I just have a couple of more questions to ask you, man. I can talk. First of all, I love sales. I love sales.
You do?
I love it. I could talk about it for hours. It is something that is near and dear to my heart. The reason for that is we are all in sales. And the question is, I used to have a manager. He used to ask me, he used to say, Kayshawn, are you picking up what I'm putting down? And that little question is true as individual businesses. If a husband is talking to a wife talking to a husband, partner to partner, children to parents, no matter where the communication is going on, the question is that person or persons picking up what you're putting down? Which leads me to the question. Your passion for leadership and marketing and sales is evident. I mean, we've been talking for 42 minutes. So it's pretty evident. But how can you, if you can sum it up in a few short words, how can business leaders, entrepreneurs, cultivate a similar passion for marketing, sales, and leadership, even if that's not their primary area of expertise?
Well, you know what? I think, I'm going to quote Bob Proctor on this. And he said to me, the people of this millennium the smartest people will be the ones who realize that they have to unlearn what they've already learned to relearn something new. Okay. The human experience has changed since 1980. Okay. We're dealing with an evolved human being here. We're not dealing with, and I've said this before, my father was in business for years, but if he had to survive in a business world like we have today, he would fail. Mm-hmm. Because he just doesn't get it. He doesn't understand it. Okay. And I think that's the learning process is people have to understand that when it comes to selling, this is not a game of I have the best price, I have the best product, I have. This is a game of you have. What do you need? What do you have? What do you want? What can I give you? What can I give you? Okay, what can I help you with? One of the things I've really kind of, and I'm going to say it, I pride myself in this. I'm like everybody's go-to guy. Okay? People call me up and I get this all the time. People would say to me, hey, Randy, do you know a guy who can do this? Randy, do you know a guy who can do that? Randy, do you know anybody who's in real estate? Well, sure. Whereabouts? Well, I'm in Arkansas. Yeah, I don't really know anybody in Arkansas, but let me check around for you and I'll get back to you. And I'll find somebody. and I'll call him up and I'll say, hey, listen, you're looking for a real estate guy in Bentonville, Arkansas. Yeah, well, I got you a guy here.
I love Bentonville, Arkansas, by the way. Some of the nicest people on earth live in Bentonville, Arkansas.
My brother, my ex-brother-in-law, he lives in Bentonville, and he's one of the VPs of Walmart.
Of course he is. That's down there.
So anyway, but I've become people's go-to guys, and it's funny because I guess it was about 3 weeks ago. I got a check in the mail. A check in the mail for $800. I didn't even know the guy. Didn't know him. I didn't recognize the name. So I'm sitting here with the check in my drawer. About a week later, the guy calls me up and he says to me, hey, Randy. And I said, yeah. And he said, well, do you remember me? And I said, no. He says, you were referred to me by another guy. This guy. And I said, Bob Clark. And I said, oh, well, I know Bob. I know Bob for years. He says, yeah. Well, he says, I know. He says, you were referred to me by him. And he gave me some information that you gave him. And I just want you to know that he says, I went on and made $1 million. And I just felt compelled to send you a check. And you know what? Stuff like that happens because it doesn't happen often. It doesn't happen every day. But you know what? It's one of those little things in life that confirms to you that you're on the right track. I love helping people. And this is the difference between great marketing and poor selling. Great marketing, I'm trying to make an emotional connection with you. Just you. And look at the way we look at each other right now. Now, you and I haven't known each other long, but there's a chemistry here.
It is.
And because I can feel it.
So can I.
Okay? I feel you. And you see, that tells me that we've got some magnetism here, that we could go on and do other things together, and we could probably have great conversations together. Okay? That's when you do marketing, you do selling.
Yes.
That's the feeling. So how do I get to know my customer? Well, I ask them questions, and I ask them a lot of questions. And it's so funny because I'll have a client who'll say to me, I'll say, well, why don't you tell me about this? Like, what is it you're looking to do? Well, I need this product and I need it this way. I say, okay, so tell me about that. Tell me about this. Tell me about that. How does that make you feel? Well, I need I need this, and it makes me feel sad that I don't have it. Sad. Okay. Well, sad's a feeling. How else does that make you feel? And then periodically I'll get people to say to me, what do you care how I feel?
Yes. I've had people ask me that as well.
I said, I'll tell you. Because if you don't feel what I'm showing you, you're going to buy nothing. And if I don't understand how you feel, you're buying nothing.
And you know what? Randy, I do have one more question, but I will say this. I have told people, I'm sitting at the table, and I said to people, if your heart does not expand based on what we're talking about, I'll leave. I'm getting up from the table. Yep. There's no reason for us to even do business. I won't even sell you anything because your heart doesn't expand.
And you see, this is, and again, I don't want to make this into a biblical thing, but this reminds me of a story that comes from the book of Thomas, which didn't make the grade for the Bible. It was considered one of the Gnostic Bibles, one of the hidden Bibles. And in the book of Thomas, the church has always taught that, you get down on your hands and knees, you put your hands together and you talk to God. And well, God's not listening. So when does God listen? God listens when the thought of your mind meets the emotions of your heart. When the two become one, ask the mountain to move and it will move. But you see, it's such an automatic thing in our lives that we don't pay attention to it. If I feel something in my heart, does that mean I get it? No. When I think of something, when I have a great idea, do I get it right away? No. But when the mind and the heart become one,
that's it.
That's the connection.
That's the connection. That is the connection. And speaking of connection, Randy, what does it mean? What does it mean to you in a short, concise way? Because we can talk. We can talk for hours. I'm not even done. No, literally, for real. I'm not done, but I know we got to move on. But what does it mean to you, in your own words? What does being a champion mean to you, being that you are on the Champion Nation podcast?
Happy.
Interesting.
Happy. And happy is a word that's thrown around. It's flagrant. But let's isolate that for just a second. Every human being in the world wants to be happy.
Correct.
But there's a caveat to that, and that is that some people are happy in their own misery. So what does it really mean to be happy? To find that level of homeostasis where you're in comfort with yourself. You know what? I used to be one of those guys that, oh my God, how am I going to pay my bills? What am I going to do? Oh my God, my life was in chaos. It's the exclusion of the chaos. I think everybody wants to be happy. But, there's always a misconception about that because people think, well, money makes me happy. Money doesn't make you happy. I got a good friend who, she says, if I only won the lottery and made $1 million, I would be so happy. I said, no, you'd just be a miserable bitch with $1 million. Okay? Because money doesn't change who you are.
No.
It just makes you more of what you are.
It magnifies you.
Absolutely. So for me, I think, being happy, man, being happy in your own skin. It's not about the money. It's not about being on a podcast. It's not about being on TV or whatever it is your thing is. Those things are nice. But, it's funny. I mean, when I did my first podcast, I was so excited. I was jumping around. I thought, oh my God, this is so exciting. I've done 1,000 of them. Well, not 1,000, but I've done 100 anyway. And that's what I'm saying, I love to do what I'm doing.
Right.
Okay. Getting up and having that feeling. And, it's only been about the last 10 years that I wake up in the morning. I'm excited to go to work. I love what I do.
Right.
I love hanging out with guys like you, man.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And doesn't that make life better?
Yes.
So you don't make as much money. Okay. So you don't drive a Lamborghini. Okay. So you don't live in a mansion on the hill. So what? Those are all things. And it's funny because at 64 years old, I can tell you, and God forbid I'm in the last quarter of the game, but those things don't matter. Because the house on the hill, the Lamborghini, the $1 million in the bank, when I leave this planet, are all going to belong to somebody else.
Yep, and they're going to sell it. They're going to pitch it and sell it.
They do. If those are the things that are not important, then you have to start looking at what is important.
That is true.
You see, and that's where people get stuck. They say, well, I know that this stuff is important, but it's only important for the moment. Okay? And in the whole scheme of things, you're alive for a moment.
That is true. As Earl Nightingale says, a short holiday on Earth.
That's exactly what it is. And, I remember I was sitting with Earl and we were talking about this very thing. And that's where I got the last quarter of the game from Earl Nightingale. And he said to me, he says, everybody looks at what's important in life, but once they realize that this stuff isn't important, what is important? If that's not important, then what is?
Then what is?
Right.
Then what is?
And I think people need to start looking at the what is important, because the money, the cars, the trips, the beautiful girlfriend, whatever, all that stuff wears out.
It does. It does. It's nice to have, but it isn't important. But what I would like, what is important is, where could our listeners and viewers reach you?
You know what? You can send me an email at randy@fearlessmarketer.com.
Okay.
You can go to my website, fearlessmarketer.com. You can find me on any social media platform: Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. I'm even on TikTok.
Congratulations.
And YouTube. And just to let you know, if you send me an email, I answer my emails myself.
That's good to know as well.
Okay. Or if you phone me, it's usually, "Hi, this is Randy." I don't have a secretary answering my phone for me. So, yeah.
Well, Randy,
you get a hold of.
Thank you so much. This has been a joy. Literally, this has been the longest podcast episode we have ever done. So today we have made history, and rightfully so. This was good stuff. This was good information. Like I said, I love sales, and obviously it is apparent that you are extremely passionate about marketing and sales. Hey, Champion Nation, you don't have to be a business to be a salesperson or be in sales. Let me say that. You don't have to be a salesperson to be in sales. You all by yourself are a business entity. You're a business entity. And it doesn't matter if you're communicating with a spouse, a partner, a child, friend, a boss, the person at the fast food counter at a restaurant. You are always selling something. You are always marketing something. And the question is, the person on the other end, are they picking up what you're putting down? Randy had so many great nuggets. Are you how emotionally engaged are we? How do we emotionally convey that message? And I promise you, we are going to have a part 2 in 2024. And we're going to talk about sales, marketing, spirituals. We're going to cover everything. And Champion Nation, please don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and share what you have heard today if you like it. Take care and have a champion week.